The very last in our enhancement theory that we're going to talk about in terms of enhancement theory number 7 is the brush tool. So a couple things we're going to do with the brush tool is we're going to go into a development module, and we're going to take a look at the panels first and see how we use them effectively, and then we'll take us from there. Okay, so we have this brush tool panel. We're going to open it up. What we see, as I mentioned to you before, is that the controls pretty much just took the effect directly from the graduated filter and pretty much slapped it over directly onto the brush tool. So the dials are pretty much the same, and part of the reason why we built our learning so that we learn to use a graduated filter first, because we can kind of look at the desired effect from the graduated filter and then get a better idea in terms of how to use the brush. What we have added on with the brush tool is down towards the bottom here. And a couple things that we have there is the different brushes. So we have here, we have brush A, brush B, so we can select different kind of brushes, or we can predefine two kind of brush. Honestly, in my years of using it, I've just been using brush A all along. I haven't found a chance to really use brush A and B, because the other thing too, I find that to move my mouse over to click on brush B is probably, it's kind of slow for me. We have the erase, so once you paint something on, you can always take it out by using erase. By just clicking on it, you can kind of see the erases now. Well, it won't highlight yet because there's no brush on the picture as of now. You can kind of see there's two rings that we're going to talk about here. In this case, we're going to pull the feather down to 0. And we have our brush as we see there on the screen, and I'm literally changing the size of the brush by just scrolling up and down on my mouse right here, which is super useful. Now if I press the shift key on my keyboard, what you're going to see is that there's going to be like another second circle that grows out of it, as you can kind of see there. So the further I go, the softer the feather, the least I go, the harsher the feather, and this is how much spread you want. So you have the center area right now, this is the focus, the main brush, and then you have the feather, which is the expansion part of it, as you can kind of see there. A couple other things here, you have flow that controls how much you want to paint. It's almost like in a way opacity, so it will allow you to kind of keep painting over and over and over and over an area to build the effect. You have auto mask. We'll talk about what auto mask is later on. And lastly, you have density here. The density in this case, it acts like a limiter, like a capper. So for instance, if I have this set at 100, it will allow the full effect of the brush to show through. Or however, if I pull this down to 50, it will only allow 50% of the effect that I dial up in the panel above right here to show through. To give us a demonstration of that, it's probably best if I just go in here and just demonstrate the different the brushes and the different uses that it has. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm just going to use the top corner of this picture here, zoom in to kind of paint and show us what we're talking about in the blue, so it's easier to see. So what we're going to do in this case is just start out with a simple exposure increase of +1. We're going to just pretty much dial the feather down to 0 right now, so you can kind of see. I'll pull the flow and density up to 100, so you kind of know what I'm talking about. So this is at flow and density 100. You can kind of see with the feather at 0, this just really brightens up an area like that. If I set the feather to 100, you go with a smaller brush here, like so, and I'll set the feather to 100. You're going to notice if I paint another one here, see how soft it is? Okay, so the softer edge is with the feather, the without is without the feather. Now, to keep in mind too, that every single time when you use a brush in Lightroom, it has to put that little thing like an anchor point down, and if you hover over it, it will show you the mask or the area that you're effectively applying the effect to. So in that case, it's showing you what the area we have highlighted. You can kind of see the edges are different. One of them is soft, the other one is harsh. So you always need an anchor point. Now, what you don't need to kind of be concerned about is the anchor point doesn't have to show up exactly where the brush is, as demonstrate like in this two lines right here. The anchor point's here, the brush can be here, or it can be another different section of image in general. But it just needs to have that anchor point so it knows where to map the pixels and where to brighten how much of each. Okay. So that being said, let's talk about a few other things. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to actually go with the feather at 0. I'll dial the flow down to about 50. And I'm going to paint over this area. And if you can kind of see there, I'm going to do this brush is like the second time. I'm going to go over it 2 times. I'll do a third brush and I'll go over this area like 3 times. even 4 maybe. And you can kind of see there that we can slowly graduate a paint an area and increase the darkness of it every time we go over an area by using flow. So we limit the flow to 50. By the time we dial once is about 50%. If we dial it twice, it's going to be about, well, as I mentioned, about 100% because it keeps building up. Again, this is 50. And if we just dial, draw a line through across, that's about close to 100 right there in that area. So you can kind of see from that point. Okay. Lastly, what really changes this whole thing is that we're going to pull the flow up and we're going to do the density down at 50. Okay. Let's scroll down a little bit here. So actually, I'm going to scroll to the side a little bit. So we do that. What we're going to get here when we have the density at 50, when we pull it up, is that it doesn't matter how many times you try to paint over the same area again. It's only going to go up to about 50. And if you notice, this is at flow 100. At density 100, you can kind of see here, this is at 50, so it really caps that exposure to really about 0.5, and that's just kind of what flow does, or excuse me, what density does. Now, if you do flow at 50 and density at 50, what you're really doing is that every time you're dialing the effect, and as you can kind of see, you're giving yourself more opportunities to paint in greater and deeper effects as I go along each different stroke. But when you use flow and density in combination, we can start with a really light, almost no effect, where this one is almost not noticeable right here, and this one's a little bit noticeable. So you can kind of play around with this way, and if you want to, just grab the brush and go ahead and do that. At any time you want to delete the brush, make sure it's selected, the anchor point's in black like so, and just press the delete key. It'll poof, take it all away. So it's really simple in that kind of a manner. That's the brush tool in general. Now, where the brush tool really comes in is I'm going to use only maybe just select a few pictures here in this case to kind of demo what we're going to do for this part. Pick some other pictures here. So with the brush tool, what we can do is really go in and darken an area, or what happens is we can do some creative effect. For this one, what I'm going to do is use this picture to demonstrate the whole concept of auto mask, what that does. So for us to do that successfully, what I'm going to do here in this case is start out first by making sure everything is 0 in terms of adjustment, pull the saturation down to -100. What I'm going to do here is go in with the flow and density at 100, and I'll go in a super large brush, just like that. Put an anchor point in a corner and just turn everything into black and white. Okay. From this point, what I'm able to do now is going to use erase. And when I use erase, what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in this area. 1 to 3. And what I'm going to do in this case is put the color back in the petal. Now, if you look at what I'm doing here, I have colors spilled all up the yin-yang, which is not really a good way to go about doing something because this is too much work. So what we can do here in this case is I'm going to undo that, and we can click on Auto Mask. And notice if I click on Auto Mask, in this case I'll make the brush really large. As long as the center of my brush, as you can kind of see there, the little gray circle with the negative in it, is in the area where I want to paint, or have colors in this case. If you kind of see there, it just makes it really easy. And this area spills out a little bit. It's okay. I'll show you a quick way to clean it up as well. So I'm going to come in just around the edges and kind of do some selective coloring, just like so. A little bit more around these edges here. Get these edges a little bit closer. There's some gray there. So you might have to find yourself meticulously coming very close to the edge at any given time just to kind of get the lines going. Once you get it going, it should be rather easy. And I spill on a couple areas purposefully and non-purposefully as well, so you can kind of wash this through. I'm going to come in towards the bottom here, get this area, and literally spill a little bit more. Why not? Coming in here, and I'm gonna just go in, and I'm gonna just stop right there for a second. Now, if I paint in particularly this area, let me just undo that quickly. Larger brush. So if I paint in this area, you're gonna notice a couple of things. That if I zoom in further, you're gonna notice that there are part of it that hasn't filled in because it detects these areas at a different edge or different color, for instance. So it understands color, it understands contrast. So what I've successfully done is I literally took out the auto mask. And now I'm just erasing the inside to bring the color back, as you can kind of see there. very selectively, very carefully, doing it very, very quickly just to get the effect that we want, just like that. In fact, what I'm going to do here is take the feather out because there's too much feather and it's affecting the way how the pixels are getting landed. I'm going to come back here to brush number A, and what I'm simply going to do here is come with a smaller brush and literally enable auto mask on this part, and just come and just touch on the outside area of those petals, as you can kind of see there. I'm not doing a lot of work here, it's just automatically seeing the area to contrast and it's just taking it out automatically for me. It's a very quick way of going about doing something, going about changing an image, and hard to do it otherwise, and hard to do it this quickly in Photoshop, so you can kind of see there. If you like to get creative, what you can also do is apply color to the background by just clicking on the color right here and selecting like a blue or something like that if you want to. Now notice though that I only have one brush anchor point and it's the same one. What I've just do there is I paint this whole thing with saturation -100, and I use the erase tool to just erase that flower out, or put a mask on the other area beside the flower, pretty much. Okay, that being said, one last thing, I'll show you a quick use of my brushes, the way how I use them. A lot of time what I do with portraiture is I actually use brush and brush and graduated filter combined. So let's pick a picture that would probably work for this really well. Let's find another one. Let's use KT. I think she'll be a good example for that. So I'm going to pick this one here. So it's not only do we start out with a picture with a good lighting, many times what we have to do is we also have to go in and play around with the image as well. And also we have to many times kind of change the light in our picture. So I'm going to go and increase the contrast, take a lot of the blues out in this case, or excuse me, the warmth out a little bit, increase some magentas to soften the picture. Pull some highlight back. I'm going to actually put some shadows, fill in. So for something like this, for example, like this picture right here, they can't dial that right. What we can do is come in and use graduated filter. In this case, I'm going to reset that. I'll pull the exposure down to like -1. I'll do 3 of them. So I'll start at one like right there, another one from the top, and another one from the bottom, and just kind of pull that up right there. Okay, the bottom one's too much, so what I'm going to do is go in here, make sure it's highlighted, and just dial it back like so. Just have something like that, and literally I'll come in with a brush tool, increase the exposure a little bit, take auto mask out, do a lot of feather because we're painting somebody's face. I'll go at a lower density, and I'll do a low density and also low flow as well, so that I can paint the effect. And I'll click on her somewhere, doesn't matter. A little bit larger brush, as you can kind of see, and literally I'll paint in her face area, and this is not enough, so you can go ahead and increase this as well. So I'll paint that area to make her a little bit lighter. As you can kind of see there, this is from a before image, and we're gonna wait for our computer to get it going a little bit here, generating a preview. So this is the before and this is the after, and what we successfully done is just literally come in and control the tones in the image. So anyhow, this is the brush tool in a nutshell. Again, the brush tool can do a lot of things, but it's just really one of those things where you have to kind of put in the time and just really play around with it, and hopefully you're gonna find out that this is a very powerful tool to use in Lightroom as well. Again, I hope you guys find this helpful. If you need any other videos, feel free to just send me an email. Alright, thanks.